We're going to compare the music of Johann Sebastian Bach and George Frederick Handel. I'm going to read to you some beautiful words written by one of the great musicologists of the past, Manfred Bukofzer, back in the 1940s. I'm going to read from his magisterial Music in the Baroque Era. I'm going to read 4 excerpts from pages 345 to 349. The musical style of Handel must be seen in the general perspective of late Baroque music, and must be evaluated in relation to its opposite pole, the style of Bach. There are many striking similarities between these two ultimate representatives of Baroque music. Both were born in the same part of Germany. Both were reared in the atmosphere of cantors and organists. Both were famous for their improvisations. Both preferred the organ to any other instrument for their own playing. Both were stricken with blindness. Both dictated their respective last work, which was in either case a revision of a composition from an early period. However, these external parallels lose significance in view of the fundamental polarity between Handel and Bach. As musicians of the Baroque, both Handel and Bach were equally indebted to the doctrine of affections, but their methods of representation differ widely and reveal a sharp contrast with regard to melodic design. Handel excels in broad and gestural motifs, Bach in complex and intricate lines. Handel's melodies are extensive. Bach's melodies are intensive. This antithesis is borne out by the arioso part of the aria "He was despised" from the Messiah, and the recitative "Erbarm es Gott" from the St. Matthew Passion. In both compositions, the scourging of Christ is represented by means of chords in heavily heaving rhythms. Although the pictorial background is practically the same, the musical results are hardly comparable. Bach traces in his melodic design and his tight harmonic progressions the affections of each word. Handel seizes only upon the basic affection and writes a melody of wide arches. Handel's penchant for improvisation manifests itself in his sweeping melodic lines, designed in bold strokes as if painted with a thick brush in fresco manner. Bach's penchant for the luster of scrupulous workmanship manifests itself in his consistently patterned melodies, designed as if engraved with a fine cutting tool. The two-dimensional intricacies of Bach's implied polyphony lie below the surface of the melody. Handel's one-dimensional melodies sweep the hearer off his feet by the sheer force of their drive. In their sensuous and immediate appeal, the arias of Handel stand diametrically opposed to the abstract appeal of the lines of Bach.
Euch dir
Bach's and Handel's divergent conception of melody entails an equally sharp contrast with regard to counterpoint. It can best be grasped if the second movement of Handel's Suite in G minor is compared with Bach's two-part Invention in A minor. Both compositions utilize the identical motif. It is quite possible that Bach deliberately borrowed the beginning from Handel to show what he could do with it. Bach gives a thoroughly consistent elaboration of the theme, whereas Handel loses himself in the sequential spinning out of new material, only occasionally returning to the theme. Although Handel, like Bach, employs double counterpoint, his movement seems loose and improvisatory by comparison. Here again, the fundamental polarity of the two composers comes to light. To Handel, who is always close to improvisation, the flow of ideas is more important than their elaboration, whereas to Bach, the elaboration is more important than the number of ideas. Handel regards counterpoint only as a means to a dramatic end, as can be seen in the quickly changing textures of his choral writing. Bach takes it as an end in itself, which must of necessity be consistent. The polarity of Bach and Handel can, in the last analysis, be explained as that of two great individualities of fundamentally different psychological attitudes. Handel belongs to the extrovert, Bach to the introvert type. This typological difference emerges most convincingly in the manner in which both composers reacted to the musical styles of the period. Handel assimilated the various national styles so that they became his second nature. He thus arrived at a complete coordination of national styles, enabling him to master each one equally well. Bach, conversely, assimilated the various influences with his own personal style, and thus arrived at a fusion of national styles in which the single elements are inseparable. The two methods are incommensurable and cannot be weighed against each other. But they explain why Handel's works center around his operas, written from a worldwide perspective for an international public, and his oratorios, the monuments of his ethical humanism, and why Bach's works center around his cantatas, written for the local churches of Saxony, and his passions, the monuments of his liturgical severity. In this light, the life of Handel and Bach symbolizes their respective artistic significance. Handel, always bent on success, passed through the international centers of music. Bach, unconcerned about worldly success, began and ended his career within the narrowness of central Germany. Both composers are universal in their appeal. The worldly grand manner of Handel and the spiritual attitude of Bach represent the two essential and at the same time complementary aspects of Baroque music, which cause the curious paradox that Bach and Handel are equals only where they are incomparable.